Hi everybody, my name is Michelle and welcome back to my channel. This is a space for STEM students created by a former STEM student. I will be discussing all things STEM careers and also lifestyle. So this is a video application season. Now my first video went into an in-depth explanation of some of the things that you can do to prepare yourself before you start making all of your applications. I'll be going into some of the things that I used to do when applying for graduate jobs, some of the things that I used to do that used to help increase my chances of not being phased out at such an early stage of the application process. It is the first step, and it's also the one that most people tend to overlook, and that's the reason why that they do get phased out over, small simple things such as spelling errors, grammar errors, missing out a question, for example. So let's say you found a company that you wanted to apply for, you click on the link and the job description pops up. The first thing that I would do is I would take a thorough look into that job description. Nowadays, it's really easy to assume that just by the title of the role, that role is suitable to your skills and to your degree. So for example, as a chemical engineer, I would see chemical engineering graduate and I'll be like, yep, click the link, apply. But nowadays, companies have become really good in giving us more in-depth descriptions as to the kind of tasks that you'll be doing within that role and the kind of qualifications that you would need in order to do that role. I just thought I'd show you guys an example of my thought process when applying for graduate roles. So I would use GradCracker, which is a fantastic website for STEM jobs. I would filter the jobs to my background, which is chemical and process engineering. I would then also sort the results by the deadline day, and the only reason being is that I wouldn't want to apply to something that has a deadline of either tomorrow or the day after, purely because I know my application would be rushed and probably a waste of my time. So I would scroll through the remaining results and click on something that, looks appealing to me. In this case, it's a process engineer role within the energy industry. So reading through the description, it all sounds quite interesting. Right at the bottom there, you can see the key responsibilities with the final paragraph going into detail about some of the soft skills that the company would require from the candidates. So I would copy and paste this onto my notes and reference it later. I would then also click on the landing page of the website. And the reason being is so that in case the company includes any more key skills that they could have missed out on the GradCracker page as well, just so that I kind of take every opportunity to find out as much information I can about this role. Even if my CV and cover letter doesn't include some of these keywords, I would think about some of the experiences that I've been through and I would try to draw out some of these key buzzwords. Just edit my CV, edit my cover letter, so you are basically making the company's HR's job a lot easier for them. I would also make note of any capability deficits. And what I mean by this is, for example, if there was a technical skill or if there was a competency that you kind of went through your experiences and you realised that, you haven't covered it in your educational background or your working background, I would take note of these, as these are some of the things that could pop up at a later stage during the interviews. So I would take note of these, I would write them down, and I would just keep them to mind. Obviously, do not lie on your CV, do not lie on your cover letter. These are things that can be easily spotted by recruiters. Stay as honest as possible, but at the same time, try not to undersell yourself. At the end of the day, you are one applicant out of many of thousands, depending on how big the company is, and you want to put your best foot forward. I would go on to proofread my CV and cover letter after I have finished editing it. Now, I would only proofread it after taking a break from the initial edit. And the reason I do this is because after reading a document so many times, you start to see words that aren't there. You start to miss out spelling and grammar errors. I would probably give myself maybe a day or two or even a couple of hours of just doing another activity, and then I would go back, proofread that CV and cover letter for simple things again, spelling, grammar, whether that sentence makes sense. I would put myself in the shoes of a recruiter. I would read my own documents and think, would I hire myself? You should be your biggest critic. Once I've completed my CV and cover letter, once I've proofread it, I would then start the online application. Now, some companies extract information from your CV and cover letter and they populate it onto their own platform. Other companies just kind of take in your CV and cover letter as the application plus some extra questions. Regardless of how you do it, it's important that you kind of write in the right details. So when it comes to them extracting information, make sure that that information is in the right place. I don't know how many times where I have found my name being my home address, or my home address being my university job or job I had at uni. Information extractors are not the most accurate, so I would 100% go through it line by line and making sure everything is in the right place. At the end of the day, during this application season, especially if it's a big company, it's not a physical person that's looking through your application, it's an algorithm, and if it spots a simple error, a simple mistake, you are that bit more likely to being phased out at this initial stage. So following on from this, I would then answer any further questions. For example, the company could be asking me why I want to work for them. They could be asking me what kind of skills am I bringing to the table. The key tip here is that instead of actually writing your answers on the online page, I would draft my answers on Word. I would then proofread my answers in Word after taking a break, and then I would copy and paste these answers back into the online application. For me, this was a very easy way to keep track of my word count, to keep track of any spelling, grammar issues, and also I just didn't feel comfortable doing all of that typing from scratch on the online application in case I accidentally clicked something or in case I accidentally changed something. If I wanted to kind of use that paragraph again in another company's application, because a lot of the time the questions that they ask are quite similar, you'd also be able to go back and edit that paragraph or that chunk of text and make it suitable to another company. I kind of used it as a template by keeping it on Word, and it just helps because the more applications you do, the faster you get. You know exactly what to write, and if you can refer to something that you did in another application, and let's say for example you managed to get a lot further into this application, you know that there was something right in that chunk of text, then you want to pick it out, retrofit it to this new company, and then pop it back in again. You need to do another proofread of your whole application this time. So yes guys, that is 3 different proofreading exercises. So you would go from top to bottom, all the way from your name that you put right at the top, all the way down to the bottom, which is probably something about reading terms and conditions, and you would check for any errors whatsoever. It's a very quick and simple, easy process. Most people tend not to do this, hence why you get that straight decline like me. So you know, 100% recommend it when you have a clear mind and you rested and you haven't been spending 2 to 3 hours on that application and then you're trying to proofread it straight after, because you are not going to spot those mistakes. So it is a lengthy process, but I promise you, the more that you do it, the faster that you get and the better that you get at submitting online applications. And hopefully your success rate also increases too. If you are somebody that doesn't get phased out in online applications, then you're definitely doing something right. So finally, after you click submit, I would jump straight onto my application tracker and I would input the details of that company that I just applied for, and then the tracking begins. So I hope these hints and tips were useful to you, and I hope that you can implement at least some of them when it comes to making all of these online applications. Obviously, this is very different for somebody that is applying for a direct entry role as opposed to a graduate program role. If you don't know the difference between the two, hop back over to my first video where I explained them in a bit more depth. So when it comes to direct entry roles, you are applying with your CV and cover letter mostly, and sometimes you do get asked a few follow-up questions in terms of why you want to apply for that company, so you don't have to go through that long-winded process of having to go through a whole online application on a different platform. However, you can still implement a few of my hints and tips. For example, you can edit your CV and your cover letter. As well, you can proofread at every stage when it comes to submitting information, and don't forget to, you know, take a break between you actually making those changes and you actually proofreading, and also taking your time. The most important, give yourself enough time to spend on this application. The more time you put in, chances are you will be able to spot those small things that you would have missed if you were just rushing right before a deadline. Thank you guys for watching. please head over to my next video, which basically goes over, well, part 1 of applying for roles, which is the online application. Reason why this little end section is I'm wearing different clothes, I'm in a different background. Well, I actually completely forgot to film it. So yeah guys, have a good one.